Jackson Reed adjusted his platinum cufflinks as he stepped out of his black Bentley Continental GT, the cool evening breeze of downtown Boston brushing against his tailored navy suit. At 35, he had everything he'd worked for: CEO of Reed Enterprises, a thriving investment firm he'd built from scratch, a penthouse overlooking the harbor, and now the woman he believed was his perfect match. Tonight was special, his 6-month anniversary with Natalie Porter, the sophisticated art gallery owner who'd captured his attention at a charity gala. He circled to the passenger side, opening the door for her with practiced ease. "Darling, you look absolutely stunning tonight," Jackson said, extending his hand to help Natalie from the car. Her emerald dress hugged her slender figure, complementing her auburn hair that cascaded in soft waves past her shoulders. "Only the best for my favorite restaurant," Natalie replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been distant lately, but Jackson attributed it to the stress of her upcoming exhibition. The Velvet Room was Boston's most exclusive restaurant, a place where reservations were booked months in advance unless you were Jackson Reed. The maitre d' greeted them with a respectful bow. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Porter, wonderful to see you again. Your usual table awaits." They followed him through the dimly lit dining room, past tables of Boston's elite engaged in hushed conversations. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the deep mahogany furnishings and burgundy velvet drapes that gave the restaurant its name. Jackson nodded at familiar faces, clients, business partners, rivals, as they made their way to the private alcove overlooking the city skyline. "Wine, sir?" The sommelier approached as they settled into their seats. "The 2015 Chateau Margaux, please," Jackson replied without consulting the wine list. He reached across the table, taking Natalie's hand in his. "I have something for you." He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, placing it on the table between them. Natalie's eyes widened. "Jackson, we agreed." "It's not a ring," he assured her with a chuckle. "Not yet, anyway." He pushed the box closer. "Open it." Inside lay a platinum key attached to a designer keychain. Natalie lifted it, confusion evident on her face. "It's a key to my penthouse," Jackson explained. "I want you to move in with me." Before Natalie could respond, a female voice spoke from behind him. "Good evening. Welcome to the Velvet Room. I'll be your server tonight." Jackson froze. The crystal glass slipped from his fingers, spilling water across the pristine white tablecloth. He knew that voice, soft, slightly husky, with a hint of a southern accent that 7 years in Boston hadn't erased. A voice that had once whispered, "I do," and later screamed, "I never want to see you again." He turned slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. Standing there in the restaurant's black uniform was Madeline, his ex-wife. Her chestnut hair was shorter now, framing her face in a way that accentuated her high cheekbones and full lips. But what made Jackson's blood run cold was the unmistakable curve of her belly beneath her apron. "Tonight's specials include," Madeline continued professionally, her voice trailing off as her eyes met Jackson's. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by shock, then a carefully constructed mask of indifference. "Jackson," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "Madeline," he managed to say, his voice barely audible. "You're—" His eyes dropped to her stomach. "Pregnant?" "Yes." She placed a hand protectively over her belly. 5 months along?" Natalie looked between them, confusion evident. "Jackson, do you know our waitress?" Before he could answer, Madeline spoke. "I'm his ex-wife." She turned to Natalie with a tight smile. "And you must be the current girlfriend I've read about in Boston Magazine." "Fiancée, actually," Natalie corrected, though no formal proposal had taken place. She extended her hand, displaying a diamond tennis bracelet Jackson had given her for her birthday. Natalie Porter. Madeline's expression flickered for just a moment before she regained her composure. "Congratulations. Now, about those specials." Jackson barely heard her recitation of the chef's offerings. His mind was racing, calculating dates. 5 months pregnant. They'd been divorced for 8 months. The timing made his heart constrict painfully. "I'll give you a moment to decide," Madeline said, turning to leave. "Wait," Jackson called after her. "Madeline, we need to talk." "I'm working, Jackson," she replied without turning around. "Some of us have to." The barbs stung. When they'd been married, Madeline had been finishing medical school, her dream of becoming a pediatrician nearly within reach. Now she was waiting tables while pregnant. What had happened? "Who is she?" Natalie demanded once Madeline was out of earshot. "And why didn't you tell me you were married before?" Jackson ran a hand through his dark hair. "It was a long time ago," he said, though in reality it felt like yesterday. "We met in college, married young. It didn't work out." "Clearly," Natalie said coldly. "And the baby? It's not mine," Jackson said quickly. "It can't be. We've been divorced for months." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. The last time he'd seen Madeline had been during the finalization of their divorce. They'd argued bitterly in the lawyer's office, then ended up in his car. A final goodbye that had left them both shattered all over again. Throughout dinner, Jackson couldn't focus on Natalie's conversation about her gallery's upcoming show. His eyes kept drifting to Madeline as she moved efficiently between tables, never returning to theirs. Another server had taken over their table without explanation. She looked exhausted, dark circles visible beneath her carefully applied makeup. Yet there was a glow about her, a softness that hadn't been there during the bitter end of their marriage. "Jackson, are you even listening to me?" Natalie's sharp tone cut through his thoughts. "I'm sorry," he apologized, reaching for her hand. "It's just a shock seeing her here." "Well, get over it," Natalie snapped. "This is supposed to be our special night, and you're spending it staring at your pregnant ex-wife." As the dessert plates were cleared, Jackson made a decision. "I need to speak with her." "If you leave this table to chase after her," Natalie warned, "don't expect me to be here when you get back." Jackson hesitated, torn between the woman he thought was his future and the woman who had once been his everything. "I'll just be a minute," he promised, rising from his seat. He found Madeline in the staff area, removing her apron. "Your shift is over?" he asked, startling her. "Jackson, you can't be back here," she hissed, glancing around nervously. "The baby," he said, cutting to the chase. "Is it mine?" Madeline's hand instinctively went to her stomach. "That's none of your business." "If it's my child, it is absolutely my business," he insisted, stepping closer. "The timing, Madeline. 5 months. That's right after our divorce was finalized." Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Go back to your fiancé, Jackson. You've moved on. So have I." "Have you? Because last I heard you were finishing your residency at Boston Children's. Now you're waiting tables. What happened, Maddie?" The old nickname slipped out unconsciously, and he saw her flinch. "Life happened," she replied bitterly. "Now please, I need this job." As she pushed past him, Jackson caught her wrist. "Let me help you." Madeline yanked her arm away. "Like you helped last time? No thanks." She grabbed her coat and bag. "Congratulations on your engagement. I wish you both all the happiness I never had with you." With that, she walked out the back door, leaving Jackson standing alone, haunted by ghosts of what might have been, and the growing certainty that the child Madeline carried was his. Jackson returned to the table to find Natalie scrolling through her phone, the velvet box with the key closed and pushed to the side. She didn't look up as he sat down. "She left," he said, signaling for the check. "Through the back door." "Convenient," Natalie replied, her voice laced with sarcasm. She finally met his gaze, her green eyes sharp with accusation. "So, were you planning to mention your ex-wife before or after I moved in with you?" Jackson sighed, running his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd developed during the stressful early days of building his company. "Natalie, my marriage to Madeline ended a long time ago." 8 months is hardly ancient history, Jackson. She dropped her phone into her designer clutch with a snap. "And from the way you looked at her, it's clearly not as over as you'd like me to believe." The waiter arrived with the check, sparing Jackson from an immediate response. He handed over his credit card without looking at the total. Money had long ceased to be a concern for him. As the waiter retreated, Jackson leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. The divorce was messy, painful. I wanted to put it behind me. And the baby," Natalie persisted. "Is it yours?" "No," Jackson said firmly, though the seed of doubt had taken root in his mind. "It can't be." The ride back to Natalie's brownstone in Beacon Hill was tense, the silence broken only by the soft jazz playing on the car's premium sound system. When Jackson pulled up to her door, he turned to her. "I still want you to move in with me," he said, reaching for her hand. Natalie pulled away. "I need some time, Jackson. This is a lot to process." She opened the car door herself. "Call me tomorrow." Jackson watched her walk up the steps to her door, the emerald dress shimmering under the streetlights. She didn't look back as she disappeared inside. He sat there for a long moment before pulling away from the curb, but instead of heading toward his penthouse in Back Bay, he found himself driving to South Boston, to the neighborhood where he and Madeline had shared their first apartment. The modest triple-decker still stood on the corner of East 3rd and L Street, its faded blue paint peeling around the windows. Jackson parked across the street, memories washing over him. They'd rented the tiny one-bedroom on the top floor, Madeline still in medical school, Jackson just starting his investment firm with nothing but determination and maxed-out credit cards. They'd been happy then, despite the long hours and tight budget. Madeline would study at the kitchen table, while Jackson worked on business plans. They'd splurge on takeout Chinese food every Friday, eating cross-legged on their second-hand couch, dreaming about their future together. Where had it all gone wrong? The next morning, Jackson cancelled his meetings and made 2 phone calls. The first was to his private investigator, a discreet professional he occasionally used to vet potential business partners. "I need information on Madeline Reed. Correction, Madeline Turner now, I suppose. She's working as a waitress at the Velvet Room. I want to know where she lives, what happened to her medical career, and anything else you can find. Discretion is paramount." The second call was to his lawyer. "Drew, I need to know something. If my ex-wife is pregnant, and there's a possibility the child is mine, what are my rights and responsibilities?" 3 days passed with no word from Natalie, despite Jackson's calls and texts. On the 4th day, his PI delivered a comprehensive report on Madeline's current circumstances. Jackson read it in his office, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Boston Harbor that he barely noticed. Madeline was living in a small apartment in Dorchester, a far cry from the upscale neighborhood they'd moved to after his business took off. She had completed her residency at Boston Children's Hospital 6 months ago, but had been unable to secure a position as a pediatrician. The report indicated she'd been involved with Dr. William Taylor, the head of pediatrics, and a married man. The scandal had effectively blacklisted her from reputable hospitals in the area. With student loans coming due and no medical position forthcoming, she'd taken the waitressing job to make ends meet. There was no mention of the baby's father. Jackson closed the file, a mix of emotions churning within him. Anger at Madeline for getting involved with a married man, concern about her financial situation, and beneath it all, a nagging sense of responsibility, not just for the possibility that the baby might be his, but for Madeline herself. Their divorce had been his fault. He'd become consumed with growing Reed enterprises, working 16-hour days, missing dinners, anniversaries, even the funeral of Madeline's grandmother. She'd begged him to slow down, to remember why they'd started the journey together. But success had been intoxicating, and he'd chosen his company over his marriage. By the time he realized what he'd lost, Madeline had already filed for divorce. His office phone buzzed. "Mr. Reed, Miss Porter is here to see you." Jackson straightened his tie and closed the file on Madeline. "Send her in." Natalie entered, impeccably dressed in a white pantsuit that contrasted sharply with her auburn hair. She remained standing, declining his gesture toward the leather visitor's chair. "I've been doing some thinking," she began without preamble, "and some research." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Research? About your ex-wife?" Natalie crossed her arms. "Did you know she was involved in a scandal with her married supervisor? It was quite the gossip in certain circles." "I just found out," Jackson admitted, gesturing to the closed file on his desk. "So you're investigating her?" It wasn't a question. "Still concerned about her welfare after she left you?" "It's complicated, Natalie." "No, it's actually quite simple." She placed her hands on his desk, leaning forward. "You're still in love with her." "That's not—" "Don't insult my intelligence, Jackson. I saw your face when you recognized her voice. Before you even turned around, I knew I'd lost you." She straightened, composing herself. "I deserve better than to be someone's second choice." Jackson stood, circling the desk to approach her. "Natalie, I care about you deeply, but you don't love me," she finished for him. "Not the way you loved her, maybe still love her." She reached into her purse and pulled out the velvet box containing the key to his penthouse. "I won't be moving in." He took the box, their fingers brushing briefly. "I'm sorry." "So am I." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Jackson, I think you should find out if that baby is yours, and if it is, do better by them than you did by her the first time around." After Natalie left, Jackson stood at his office window, watching boats crisscross the harbor. The PI's report had included Madeline's work schedule at the Velvet Room. She would be there tonight. That evening, Jackson waited outside the restaurant's staff entrance. The sky had darkened to a deep indigo, streetlights casting pools of yellow light on the wet pavement from an earlier rain. When Madeline emerged, her coat pulled tight around her, she stopped short at the sight of him leaning against his car. "Are you stalking me now?" she demanded, clutching her purse closer. "We need to talk, Maddie. There's nothing to say." She started walking toward the tea station. Jackson fell into step beside her. "I know about Dr. Taylor." Madeline froze. "How dare you?" "I'm not judging you," he said quickly. "I'm worried about you. Working on your feet all day can't be good for the baby." "Don't pretend you care about this baby," she snapped. "You made it very clear during our divorce that children weren't in your 5-year plan." The words stung because they were true. When Madeline had brought up starting a family, Jackson had dismissed the idea, focused entirely on growing his company to the exclusion of everything else. "People change," he said quietly. "Priorities change." Madeline laughed bitterly. "Not you, Jackson. You're still the same ambitious man who put his company before his marriage. That's not fair. Isn't it? You're CEO now, just like you always wanted. Congratulations." She resumed walking. "Now leave me alone." "The baby," Jackson persisted, keeping pace with her. "Is it mine?" Madeline stopped again, turning to face him fully. In the glow of the streetlight, he could see the exhaustion etched on her face, the dark circles under her eyes. "Why would you think that?" "The timing. After our divorce was finalized, that day in my car." Her expression softened briefly before hardening again. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Jackson's voice rose, drawing the attention of passers-by. He lowered it. "If that's my child, I have a right to know." "Rights?" Madeline's eyes flashed dangerously. "Let me tell you about rights, Jackson. You had the right to be a husband when we were married. You had the right to be there when I needed you. You chose not to exercise those rights." She pressed a hand to her belly. "As for this baby, Dr. Taylor is the father." The statement hit Jackson like a physical blow. "You're sure?" "Positive," Madeline said, her voice steady. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to catch the last train." As she walked away, Jackson called after her. "Let me drive you home, at least. It's late, and Dorchester isn't the safest neighborhood." Madeline turned back, suspicion evident in her expression. "How do you know where I live?" Jackson had the grace to look sheepish. "I was concerned about you." "So you had me investigated?" She shook her head in disbelief. "Your control issues haven't changed either." Despite her anger, a particularly strong gust of wind made Madeline shiver, and Jackson saw her glance uncertainly toward the tea station several blocks away. "It's just a ride, Maddie. No strings attached." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but just a ride." The interior of Jackson's Bentley smelled of expensive leather and his signature cologne, a scent that triggered a flood of memories for Madeline as she settled into the passenger seat. She recalled buying him that cologne for their 3rd anniversary, never imagining that one day they'd be strangers to each other. "Your address?" Jackson asked, keeping his eyes on the road as he pulled away from the curb. 86 Westville Street, Dorchester, she replied stiffly, staring out the window at the passing city lights. They drove in silence for several minutes, the tension between them almost tangible. Madeline was acutely aware of Jackson's presence beside her, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel, the slight crease between his brows as he concentrated on the road. He'd always been handsome in a classic way, with strong features and those intense grey eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses. "How are you feeling?" he finally asked, his voice softer than before. "With the pregnancy, I mean." Madeline placed a protective hand over her rounded belly. "Tired. My feet kill after an 8-hour shift. You shouldn't be working so hard in your condition. Not all of us have the luxury of choice, Jackson." She turned to look at him directly. "Some of us have student loans and rent to pay." He frowned. "The divorce settlement should have—" "I didn't take your money," she cut him off. "I didn't want anything from you. That was pride talking, not common sense." "Maybe so," she conceded, "but it was my decision." As they crossed into Dorchester, the neighborhoods grew progressively less affluent. Jackson's luxury car stood out starkly against the backdrop of modest triple-deckers and corner stores with security grates. "Turn left at the next light," Madeline instructed, "then right on Westville." Jackson complied, pulling up in front of a weathered 3-story building with peeling paint and a sagging front porch. He frowned as he took in the surroundings, the flickering streetlight, the group of young men gathered on the corner, the bars on the first-floor windows. "This is where you live?" "Not all of us can afford penthouses in Back Bay," Madeline replied defensively. She reached for the door handle. Thanks for the ride. Wait. Jackson placed his hand on her arm, then quickly withdrew it when she tensed. Let me walk you to your door. That's not necessary. Please, Maddie. The concern in his voice seemed genuine. It would make me feel better. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Jackson came around to open her door, offering his hand to help her out, a gesture she ignored, struggling to her feet on her own. Her apartment was on the second floor, accessed by a narrow staircase that creaked ominously under their weight. Careful, Jackson cautioned, staying close behind her as she navigated the steps. At her door, scratched and dented from previous break-in attempts, Madeline fumbled with her keys. Well, this is me, thanks again for the ride. Jackson looked troubled. This building isn't safe, Madeline. The security is practically non-existent. It's what I can afford, she said simply, pushing the door open to reveal a tiny studio apartment. The space was clean but sparse. A futon that doubled as a bed, a small kitchenette, a desk piled with medical textbooks, and a single window overlooking the street. Jackson took in the humble surroundings with a frown. His eyes lingered on a framed ultrasound picture on the desk, the only personal touch in the otherwise utilitarian space. Is that? He gestured toward the image. Madeline nodded. My 20-week scan. It's a girl. Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. Longing, regret, she couldn't be sure. A daughter, he said softly. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Madeline broke the silence. It's late, Jackson. I have an early shift tomorrow. He nodded, taking a reluctant step back. If you need anything. I don't, she interrupted firmly. Good night. After he left, Madeline sank onto her futon, one hand resting on her belly as her daughter kicked vigorously. It's okay, little one, she whispered. He's gone now. But the encounter had left her shaken. Seeing Jackson again, being in his presence, it had stirred feelings she'd worked hard to bury, and his questions about the baby. Madeline glanced at the ultrasound picture, guilt twisting inside her. She'd lied to him. Dr. Taylor wasn't the father of her child. Jackson was. That day in his car after signing the divorce papers had resulted in more than just painful memories. But she'd made her decision. Jackson Reed had already broken her heart once. She wouldn't give him the chance to break their daughters too. The next morning, Madeline woke to a knock at her door. Cautious, she peered through the peephole to find a delivery man holding a large package. Delivery for Madeline Turner, he announced when she opened the door. I didn't order anything, she said, confused. It's already paid for, Ma'am. He handed her a clipboard to sign, then left the package, surprisingly heavy, just inside her door. Inside, Madeline found a state-of-the-art air purifier, a pregnancy pillow, a gift card for a food delivery service, and several bags of groceries containing organic produce, prenatal vitamins, and healthy snacks. A note card with Reed Enterprises logo bore a simple message in Jackson's precise handwriting. For cleaner air and better rest. No strings attached. Madeline's first instinct was to return everything, but the practical side of her acknowledged that she needed these items. Her budget was stretched thin, and the organic groceries would last her at least 2 weeks. Still, accepting help from Jackson felt like opening a door she'd firmly closed. Later that afternoon, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Ms. Turner? A professional female voice inquired. This is Dr. Patricia Winters from Boston Women's Health. We had a cancellation and can fit you in for your prenatal checkup today at 4 p.m. instead of next week. Would that work for you? Madeline frowned. There must be a mistake. I don't have an appointment at Boston Women's Health. My prenatal care is through the community clinic. Oh, the woman sounded surprised. Our records show that your insurance was updated yesterday to our premium care package. It includes all prenatal visits, delivery, and 6 months of postnatal care at our facility. Their cold realization washed over Madeline. Who authorized this change? The policy is through Reed Enterprises' Executive Health Plan, the receptionist explained. It was arranged by Mr. Jackson Reed personally. Madeline's grip tightened on her phone. Cancel it, all of it. I don't want or need his insurance. Ms. Turner, this is one of the best maternal care packages available. Cancel it, Madeline repeated firmly, and please tell Mr. Reed to stop interfering in my life. She hung up, fuming. How dare he? First the gifts, now this. It was exactly like Jackson to think he could fix everything with money without addressing the real issues between them. Her phone buzzed with a text message. The clinic has a 23% complication rate for deliveries. Boston Women's Health is the best in the state. This isn't about us, Maddie. Please reconsider. Jackson. Before she could respond, her phone rang again. Her supervisor, at the Velvet Room. Madeline, I'm calling about your schedule, the manager began without preamble. We're cutting back your hours to part-time, but we're maintaining your full-time salary and benefits. What? Why? Madeline asked, alarmed. She needed those hours. Orders from the owner, the manager explained. Apparently, Mr. Donovan received a call from someone concerned about a pregnant employee working excessive hours. He specifically mentioned you by name. Madeline closed her eyes, counting to 10 before responding. This someone, was it Jackson Reed? I'm not at liberty to say, the manager replied, though her tone confirmed Madeline's suspicion. But your position is secure, and as I said, your pay won't be affected. After hanging up, Madeline grabbed her coat and purse. She'd had enough. It was time to confront Jackson directly. The Reed Enterprises headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming glass tower in the financial district. Madeline marched into the lobby, ignoring the curious glances her pregnant figure in casual clothes attracted amid the suits and business attire. I need to see Jackson Reed, she told the receptionist at the security desk. The young woman looked up, her expression apologetic. Do you have an appointment, miss? No, but he'll want to see me. Tell him Madeline Turner is here. 5 minutes later, she was escorted into a private elevator that whisked her to the top floor. Jackson's assistant, a poised woman in her 50s, met her with a sympathetic smile. He's just finishing a call, Miss Turner. He asked if you'd wait in his office. Jackson's corner office was exactly as Madeline had imagined it, spacious and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of Boston Harbor. Awards and financial magazines featuring Jackson's face lined one wall, while another displayed a large abstract painting she recognized from their former home. What surprised her was the photograph on his desk, not of Natalie, as she'd expected, but of Madeline and Jackson on their wedding day, both laughing as they fed each other cake. She picked it up, a lump forming in her throat. Why would he keep this here in his sanctuary of success? I never put it away, Jackson's voice came from behind her. He stood in the doorway, jacket off, tie loosened, still every inch the powerful CEO despite the casual stance. Even during the worst of our divorce, Madeline set the frame down carefully. You had no right to interfere with my job or my medical care. Jackson closed the door and approached her, stopping a respectful distance away. I'm worried about you, Maddie. That apartment isn't safe. You're working too hard. And community clinics are overcrowded and understaffed. That doesn't give you the right to take control of my life. Her voice rose with her anger. You lost that right when you chose this. She gestured around his opulent office. Over our marriage. I know, he admitted quietly. And it was the biggest mistake of my life. The simple admission caught Madeline off guard. Jackson Reed didn't admit mistakes. He justified decisions, reframed setbacks as strategic adjustments, but never acknowledged failure. What happened with your fiancée? She asked, suddenly realizing the implication of the wedding photo's prominent placement. Natalie ended things, he said. She recognized what I was only beginning to understand myself. He met Madeline's gaze directly. I never stopped loving you. Madeline took an instinctive step back, her heart hammering in her chest. Don't do this, Jackson. Not now. When then? He moved closer, his gray eyes intense. We've wasted so much time already. You can't just walk back into my life and expect everything to be fixed with grand gestures and declarations, Madeline said, finding her voice. You broke us, Jackson. You chose your ambition over our marriage. I know, he acknowledged, surprising her again with his candor. And I've paid for that choice every day since you left. He gestured to the expansive office. All of this means nothing without someone to share it with. Madeline crossed her arms protectively over her belly. So that's what this is about? You're lonely at the top and want your ex-wife back to complete the picture of success? Jackson shook his head. This isn't about completing any picture. It's about realizing what truly matters. He paused, his expression vulnerable, in a way Madeline had rarely seen. Losing you was my wake-up call, Maddie. Too late, I know, but I've changed. People don't change, Jackson. Their priorities do. He gestured toward her stomach. That baby is none of your concern, she cut him off sharply. But what if she is? Jackson challenged, stepping closer. What if she's mine? Madeline felt cornered, both physically and emotionally. I told you, Dr. Taylor, is a convenient lie, Jackson finished for her. I had my investigator look into William Taylor. He was in a medical conference in Switzerland the week after our divorce was finalized, the time frame when this baby would have been conceived. Madeline's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You had no right to investigate my personal life. Maybe not, Jackson conceded. But I needed to know the truth. His voice softened. The baby is mine, isn't she? The direct question hung in the air between them. Madeline considered continuing the lie, but exhaustion swept over her. She was tired of struggling alone, tired of pretending, tired of denying the truth that grew more obvious with each passing day. Yes, she finally admitted, tears welling in her eyes. She's yours. Jackson exhaled shakily as if he'd been holding his breath. He took another step toward her, stopping when she held up a hand. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice a mixture of hurt and wonder. Because I didn't want her to be a Reed Enterprises obligation, Madeline said bitterly. I didn't want her to grow up feeling like an afterthought to her father's precious company, the way I felt for the last 2 years of our marriage. Jackson flinched at her words. I deserved that, he acknowledged, but I want to do better, Maddie. For both of you. How? By throwing money and influence around, by trying to control every aspect of our lives? She shook her head. That's not what we need. Then tell me what you do need, he pleaded. Because I can't stand knowing you're living in that unsafe apartment, working on your feet all day, struggling to make ends meet when I have the means to help you. I need... Madeline's voice broke. What did she need? Pride had kept her from accepting Jackson's financial support during the divorce, but was it fair to deny her daughter a better situation because of it? I need to know this isn't just about the baby, that you're not just trying to secure your heir. Jackson's expression softened. This is about our family, Maddie. The family I was too blind to appreciate when I had it. He took a tentative step forward, and this time she didn't back away. Let me show you how much things have changed. Words are easy, Jackson. You always had a way with those. Then judge me by my actions, he challenged. Give me 6 months. If I haven't proven myself to you by then, I'll respect whatever boundaries you set for our relationship moving forward. Madeline considered his proposition. 6 months would take them past the baby's birth, a critical time when she would need support the most, and despite everything, a small part of her still wanted to believe in the man she'd once loved enough to marry. What exactly are you proposing? She asked cautiously. Move into one of my properties, not with me, he added quickly, seeing her expression. I own a townhouse in Cambridge that's sitting empty. It's in a safe neighborhood, close to good schools and hospitals. Take a leave from waitressing, focus on your health and the baby. And in return, let me be involved in the pregnancy, doctor appointments, birthing classes, preparations for the baby's arrival. His eyes were earnest. I don't want to miss any more moments, Maddie. It was a generous offer, more than generous. And yet Madeline hesitated, wary of becoming dependent on Jackson again. I'd need to find a job after the baby comes. A medical position. I have connections at Mass General, Jackson said. Not to pressure you, he added quickly. But if you want, I could arrange an introduction. Your credentials would speak for themselves. Madeline weighed her options. Her current situation was precarious at best. The apartment was unsafe, the neighborhood rough. Working at the Velvet Room was physically demanding, and the community clinic was overcrowded. Was it worth rejecting Jackson's help just to prove a point? All right, she finally said. 6 months, but I pay rent for the townhouse, a fair market rate that I can afford on a resident's salary once I'm working again. Relief washed over Jackson's face. Agreed. And no more grand gestures or interference without consulting me first, she added firmly. I promise, he said solemnly. Partners in this, just like we should have been all along. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of changes. The Cambridge townhouse was more beautiful than Madeline had anticipated. A 3-story brownstone with hardwood floors, large windows, and a nursery that Jackson had professionally decorated in soft yellows and greens. True to his word, he attended every doctor's appointment, asked thoughtful questions, and even enrolled them in weekend birthing classes where he participated with endearing awkwardness among the other expectant fathers. More surprising was the change in his work habits. Jackson now left the office by 6 each evening, declining business dinners and weekend conferences that would have once been non-negotiable. He had his assistant block out Thursday afternoons for standing appointments, which Madeline discovered meant accompanying her to prenatal checkups. Mr. Reed has shifted his priorities significantly, his assistant confided to Madeline one day when she arrived at the office to meet Jackson for lunch. The board isn't thrilled, but the company's performance hasn't suffered. If anything, he's making sharper decisions in less time. Meanwhile, Jackson's connection at Mass General had indeed led to an interview. The head of pediatrics had been impressed with Madeline's credentials and experience, offering her a position to start 6 months after the baby's birth, with the flexibility of part-time hours initially. As her due date approached, Madeline found herself relaxing into a tentative trust. Jackson had kept every promise, respecting her boundaries while remaining consistently present. He'd even attended a therapy session with her, at her request, where they'd begun the difficult work of addressing the wounds of their failed marriage. "I was scared," he admitted during one such session. "Success was something I could control. Relationships, real intimacy that terrified me. So I retreated into work where I knew the rules." "And now," the therapist prompted. Jackson looked at Madeline, his expression open. "Now I'm still scared, but I'm more afraid of losing what truly matters than I am of being vulnerable." On a crisp autumn evening, as they walked along the Charles River after a birthing class, Madeline felt the first contraction. She gripped Jackson's arm, breathing through the sudden pain. "It's time," she said when it passed, meeting his suddenly panicked eyes with a calm smile. 18 hours later, Charlotte Grace Reed entered the world, her lusty cries filling the delivery room as Jackson cut the umbilical cord with trembling hands. The nurse placed the swaddled infant in Madeline's arms, and Jackson perched carefully on the edge of the hospital bed, his finger captured in his daughter's tiny grip. "She's perfect," he whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "You're both perfect." Madeline looked up at him, exhausted but radiant. "She has your eyes." "T'es un poor kid," Jackson joked, but his gaze never left his daughter's face. In the quiet hours of that first night, as Charlotte slept in the hospital bassinet beside Madeline's bed, Jackson pulled a chair close and took Madeline's hand in his. "I have something to ask you," he said softly, "and I want you to know that however you answer, nothing changes about my commitment to you and Charlotte." Madeline's heart quickened. "What is it?" From his pocket, Jackson produced a small velvet box, different from the one he'd offered Natalie months ago. "This isn't about completing any picture of success," he said, echoing her earlier accusation. "This is about the fact that these past few months have been the happiest of my life, despite all the complications and history between us." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm asking for a chance to build a better future, together as a family. Will you marry me, Maddie? Again?" Madeline looked from the ring to Charlotte's sleeping form, to Jackson's hopeful face. The man before her was both familiar and new, the ambitious, brilliant Jackson she'd fallen in love with in college, but tempered now with humility and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. "On one condition," she said, her lips curving into a smile at his anxious expression. "No more 16-hour workdays. Charlotte and I need you present, not just providing." "I was thinking more like 8 hours, Jackson countered, relief washing over his features. 9 tops, and no working weekends." "In that case," Madeline said, reaching for his hand, "yes, I'll marry you again, Jackson Reed." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then leaned forward to kiss her gently. "I promise you won't regret giving us this second chance." As if on cue, Charlotte stirred in her bassinet, her tiny face scrunching up as she prepared to cry. Jackson reached for her before Madeline could move, lifting his daughter with newfound confidence. "Hey there, princess," he murmured, cradling her against his chest. "Did you hear that? Your mom just made me the happiest man in Boston, again." Watching them together, Jackson swaying gently as Charlotte settled back to sleep against his shoulder, Madeline felt the last of her reservations melt away. They had a long road ahead, rebuilding trust and creating new patterns as partners and parents. But for the first time in years, she believed in their future together. Sometimes, she reflected, the most unexpected reunions led to the most beautiful new beginnings.